Submersible pumps will have 1.25" poly lines attached to them right at the pump in each of the 6-inch wells. Those poly lines will attach onto our hose barbs. We've got isolation valves for each of those lines, and they flow through a check valve up and into the water treatment system. This other line coming in is coming from our multi-phase vacuum extraction system. I'll kind of explain where that connects, or how that connects onto that header, once I show you the inside of the water treatment trailer here. Let's take a walk around and into the water treatment trailer. Basic setup: this is our inlet. Inlet is up and into a just a poly tank, holding tank. I like to call it an isolation tank, as it kind of isolates some sediment if there's any sediment in the water. This may give us a little retention time to knock some of that sediment out. Got an isolation valve on the inlet and the outlet attached to a centrifugal pump. Inside the tank we've got a low and a high float, which turn the pump on and off as that water, as the tank fills. And then we have a high float on top to stop us from overflowing our tank. There's an issue with one of those floats sticking. That'll shut us down. On the pump, there's a pressure gauge, sample port, throttle valve, check valve, and a 2-inch discharge hose which loops up and over the top of the white isolation tank and over to our sediment filters. We've got 2 bag filters and 3 cartridge filters. The 2 bag filters would be plumbed up in parallel. The 3 cartridge filters also can be plumbed up in parallel to one another. Very simple. Now to change a bag, we just pop out the cage that's inside, remove the empty bag, and place a new one in. Cartridge filters. Every time we do a bag change, we should probably do a cartridge filter change too. These are 1 micron cartridges. And then from our sediment filters, loop up and over and into 2 500-pound carbon drums in series, followed by same setup again, 2 500-pound carbon drums in parallel. We've got isolation valves on each of these in case we have to isolate a tank to clean it or do maintenance on it. Got our discharge line that loops up over the ceiling out through our flow meter. This flow meter will be changed out. We have a digital flow meter coming that will be tying into our PLC so that we can keep an eye on volume of water pumped and flow rate. And out through discharge right next to our inlet. That discharge hose will exit the building right here through our other piece of tiger flax, and there'll be a run of sewer pipe, 4-inch sewer pipe, which will be connected from our elbow. There'll be sewer pipe then connecting to the setup that we prefabbed in the shop. This will be sitting over a manhole on site, and we're going to have to get some grade on that pipe. When we set that up in the field, we'll have to use some sandbags or something just to give it a little grade, just so that water will gravity away. Our multi-phase vacuum extraction trailer, again, this white one, there's quite a bit going on in here. We can talk about a lot of the details afterwards. We've got our control panels on the front, the pressure transducers and power supply for the submersible pumps are on this trailer, even though they flow into the other trailer. This is where your main feed will be coming into this panel, and it'll feed the other two trailers. So I'm just going to walk inside, show you quickly the setup. We've got our vacuum pump connected to a 20 horsepower motor. So we're pulling in through our inlet manifold in our air water separator. This is an HVLS, so as the air and liquid travel in from the fields in through these two lines, the air will continue through the vacuum pump, out through the vacuum pump discharge. We've got a discharge hose connected to that exhaust. That exhaust, we're cooling that air through a standalone cooler. Our black hose is temp rated, so it'll have to be connected to the discharge of that pump. The blue Tiger Flex hose, that air will be cooled sufficiently that we can use a hose that's not rated for temperature. And we've got our air phase carbon. It's our inlet hose into our air phase carbon primary vessel. So inlet, outlet, and on the inlet we have a sample port and a back pressure gauge. Also, we've got a temp gauge on there too, so that we can make sure that we're not firing hot air at this carbon. It will not clean the airstream if it's too hot. It'll again, we can get into those details at a later date. Again, got a pressure gauge and a sample port between the secondary vessel and the first vessel. Inlet, outlet, again, sample port in between the secondary vessel and the tertiary vessel, the final vessel. And this is where we'll be collecting our effluent sample, just to make sure that we are within compliance and not exceeding our vapor stream. Out through a bit of a funky looking discharge pipe, but it still serves a purpose. So as the liquid enters this high vacuum liquid separator, like I explained before, the air will continue on through the vacuum pump, and that air is treated and discharged, where the liquid will drop out into this bottom tank. And as it fills, we've got a float in this bottom tank, which will send the HVLS into it'll basically transfer the water in this bottom tank via pressure. So there's a series of events that happen where we isolate the bottom tank from the top tank. There's a wafer valve in the center, and when it closes, we will pressurize that bottom tank and send any water that's accumulated over and into this white isolation tank. From that, we gravity drain into our oil water separator. Open the lid here. This is our primary settling chamber. We've got an oil sump which is connected to a diaphragm pump, and any oil that accumulates in this tank will be pumped off manually using our diaphragm pump. We've got a manual valve controlling air supply to that pump. This is our inlet hose, outlet hose with the throttle valve, and there'll be an 1.5 inch line that will be sent up. It needs to get connected to that, and will be connected to our waste oil holding tank, which will be located near the equipment on site. So our separator, again, we've got a high to stop if anything does happen downstream, to stop us from overflowing that tank. And we've got a high and a low float in our pumping chamber, which basically turns smaller centrifugal pump on and off. There's an isolation valve connected on the inlet to that. throttle valve on the outlet, the pressure gauge, sample port, and as we pump out of that separator up into bag filter, through bag filter we've got primary and secondary 250 pound carbon drums. So in through the top, outlet on the bottom, in through the top, outlet on the bottom, and this is the hose that connects onto that inlet manifold that I was chatting to you about earlier on. So this is our we have clay in these drums, so this is basically the primary treatment for any water that we're extracting from the pneumatic submersible pumps and from our oil skimming in the wells with the submersible pumps. We've got vents on the top of each of these pressure gauges, sample port, and I'll show you how this loops up and around back of these carbon drums in behind the oil water separator. And that hose, again, like I said before, connects onto the inlet manifold, and that water is treated through our water treatment trailer. We have two more things that I want to show you inside this trailer. This is our air supply manifold for our pneumatic pumps. There'll be an 1.5 inch piece of red or 1.25 inch piece of red Ortec hose connected onto that hose barb connection, and that will be exiting the building through this hole, and it will connect onto the air supply header that I took some pictures of and some drawings of for you and sent to you earlier on, or I think towards the end of last week. We also have our inlet for those pneumatic pumps. Again, will be an 1.25 inch hose that will loop up and over the door and come in through the inlet opening, same as the air supply opening. We've got a compressor in the corner. This is our air supply for those pneumatic pumps. And I believe that's just about everything that I'm going to go through right now. There's a lot of information. These are our pneumatic pumps that already have hoses connected to them.